my teaching philosophy, which is I want every student to understand that they have an individual experience in this world, and their individual experience informs how they create. So I provide them with the tools and the knowledge that I have, and then they use that to make their work and make it their own, and invite that in and explore. We have moments where, in general, we're replicating these prints over and over and over, and you get this like muscle memory of the movements that you're using and everything. But then you also have those moments where you can do like monotype and monoprint, and it's a one-off, and you get to see it all come together and see how the colors mix together, and then you add new colors the next time. And it's just really fascinating to see how things start to blend and meld in a different way. And so it's a really great exploration within something that in general has very specific structures in how it works, but then you still have those moments of like branching out and creativity that gets pushed even further than you initially were planning on. Running a proof. I want to see how it went. So you can see like it needs to be inked a little bit more, but I can see like that ombre effect that's happening. So I just need to work on that darker band at the top, but that's how it goes with the linoleum printing.
I met Amanda when she came in as a grad student. I was teaching up in the drawing and painting department at the time. And then I got a position here in the printmaking studio. That's when I started working more one-on-one with Amanda, and it was really wonderful because she had taken a class that I had created based on research, and it was really nice to be able to see her research come back into printmaking even more. And yeah, so I've known Amanda for, oh my goodness, 3 years? 3 years, yeah.
What I have hanging up in the gallery that you'll be able to see is something that has led to where my thesis is now. So the triptych that I have up, it was like a series of 5 prints, but I really feel like the 3 that are up in the gallery are the ones that manifest what I was trying to say and do or try and convey at that time. And so it was last spring semester that I really worked on that, with the idea of removing material and making objects useless. Kind of in my brain, it was the idea that defense mechanisms are pointless, that there's no reason to have them. They're kind of like these coping, because now I was saying defense mechanisms, but I also understand it better now that it's also coping mechanisms. And so in my brain, I was like, oh, well, these are pointless because it creates a distance or whatever. But then toward the end of that semester, so last spring, I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wait, like these defense mechanisms are important. I need them to be able to function, compartmentalize, what I'm going through, how my family is responding to it, how it's impacting my work, how it's impacting me, the ability. There was just so much up in the air of how do I accomplish this goal that I have to get my MFA. But also I'm going to have to go through chemos and possibly radiation and surgery and all that stuff. We didn't know, is this something that will take my life? Like there was so much up in the air at that time. And it was right at the end of the semester, my busiest semester that I've ever had. I was taking 5 classes and I was teaching 1 class and trying to do all of the individual small theses for each individual class that was required and stuff. And so there was just a lot up in the air. And with that diagnosis, what I had, my thought process before kind of derailed, but it informed what I'm doing now. For my thesis that I'm currently working on, It is the idea of working in layers, and things are roughly the same size, but it's working with transparent or semi-transparent layers that have body scans. I've looked at over 2,000 images of my body that's been taken by the hospitals and doctors since I was diagnosed, and finding those images and using the ideas of the human defense mechanisms and insect defense mechanisms from Holland's special topics class. Now I've morphed that into what are my defense mechanisms, and finding insects that represent maybe certain aspects for me. So if it's like an executioner wasp and they have a very nasty stinger, but it's like I've been poked and prodded a lot over the last, almost year type of thing, and it'll be over a year by the time my show is up and stuff. And so it's one of those that finding what I feel is the representation for me in that moment for that scan, without necessarily explaining it to the masses, but having that layered feeling and the idea of shadows casting through as the light hits through, and just being transparent of this is what my body has gone through, and these are the manifestations of that. And so that's kind of where my thesis is at now, that these mechanisms are important. I need them to sustain me and stuff like that. But also I think the biggest is that living authentically and in a transparent way makes it easier for me to manage how I am feeling, and makes it so that if somebody wants to take it in, they can, or they can decide not to, and it's up to them, but I have put it out there.
I think printmaking and the trial and error that happens, printmakers learn to love it and embrace it and work through it. And I think, I can't speak for Amanda, but it does help knowing how to work through those failures with your personal life, and just keeping a positive attitude and knowing that failure and a diversion in the course that you thought you were going to have is just something that it's going to happen. And I would say that's one of the most amazing things, was seeing how positive Amanda was through something that would have derailed anyone else I know. And that just attributes to her printmaking, and it attributes to her as a person. So it was, she's the perfect example of a printmaker. Yeah.
Art encompasses so many different things, right? Like there's creation, there's hobbies, there's fine art. I think the act of creating can be cathartic and help you through whatever life is throwing at you, right? And so I've had to deal with some heavy stuff, and a lot of people have to deal with that, whether it's their health, the health of other people, it's trauma, whatever. But the great thing is like with my art, especially with the act of printmaking, because if you think about like what your paper physically has to do, what your matrix physically has to go through to be able to create this beautiful thing, it's a process. And like us as individual humans are going through a process. And because that's so individual, like again, with my teaching philosophy, it's we all have these individual stories that we're dealing with and we're healing from and we're expanding our knowledge about. And when we bring that all together and we kind of focus that in on the act of creating, it can be very healing.